After teaching guitar for over 15 years, I can tell you that the biggest obstacle that adult students face is feeling stuck in the open position and overwhelmed by endless chord shapes. But the answer is not to memorize a bunch of new chord shapes, it's to better understand the ones that you already know. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to unlock 96 chords with 2 simple shapes without the need for memorizing disconnected diagrams. If you're new here, I'm Lincoln, and this video is part of a series all about helping you build real confidence with chords all across the fretboard. Let's get into it. In the last video, which you can check out by clicking the link up here, we looked at changing the E and A chords to give us 4 different chord types: major, minor, dominant 7th, and suspended 4th. Let's look at the E form first. Here's our E major chord, which we can change to minor by removing that first finger, or we can change it to dominant 7th by removing the third finger, or we can change it to suspended 4th by putting our 4th finger down. Now we need to make these shapes movable. The easiest way to do this is with the capo. So we're going to take our capo and move it up the fretboard a bit to get out of the open position. I'm going to put it on the 5th fret here. So now that we've got the capo on, we can just play the E chord shape from here. This is still a major chord, but it's no longer in the key of E. To work out what key it's in, we can use the music alphabet. If you're not familiar with that concept, check this video out up here and it will explain everything. We put our finger behind the nut here, that represents E, because this is the E string, and then we go E, F is on the 1st fret, G is on the 3rd fret. On the 5th fret here where our capo is, we have A. So that means that this is now an A major chord. So now that we've moved this major chord to the key of A by using the capo, we can just move the capo to any fret we like and we'll have the chord in every key. But as you might be thinking, it's not exactly practical when playing a song to be moving the capo up and down the fretboard every time we need to change chords. So what we need to do is to have a movable chord shape without the use of the capo. To do this, we need to change the fingering of our major chord shape so that we have the first finger free to become a capo, which we call a bar. So we're going to take these fingers and swap them out for 3rd finger up here, 4th finger below, and 2nd finger here, and now we have our first finger free for a bar. So now we have a major bar chord which we can move to any key that we like. So if we had a chord progression like this one below, then we could play it entirely with this shape, like this. Had to do to work out what position to play in was to use the music alphabet to count up. So the first chord was G, E, F, G, like this, and play the shape from there. And then from G, A, B, play the shape from there. B, C is 1 fret in front, play the shape from there. And then C to D, play the shape from there. So now that we have a movable major bar chord, let's do the same for minor, dominant 7th, and sus4. Let's get the capo back on there to see how this works. So we have our capo on the 5th fret again, and we're going to play the minor shape now. So 2nd finger, 3rd finger below like this. And we could just play the bar with the 1st finger, but it's a bit of a stretch, so we're going to use a different fingering here. We're going to swap out the 2nd finger for the 3rd, and we're going to swap out the 3rd finger for the 4th like this. And now for our dominant 7th chord, we form the chord with the 2nd finger here, 1st finger here, and we need to get our 1st finger free, so we're going to swap the 3rd finger here, 2nd finger here, and 1st finger becomes the bar. And finally for our sus4 chord, we've got the 2nd finger, 3rd finger, 4th finger. You can see our 1st finger is already free. So we're going to put our first finger here, and that becomes the bar. Now we have 4 different chord types, major, minor, dominant 7th, and suspended 4th, that are all movable. So let's check out a chord progression that uses all 4 chord types. Now, as you may have noticed, these chords are pretty tricky to play, so if you don't have them under your fingers straight away, that's perfectly normal. Just stick at it and you'll get it. Just make sure you take regular breaks so you don't injure yourself. Let's move on to the A form. Here's our A major, minor, dominant 7th, and suspended 4th chords in the open position. Notice that this time that the root note is not on the 6th string. In fact, the 6th string is not part of the chord at all. This will become important in a second when we're trying to work out what key we're in. Let's do the same thing as we did before and put the capo on the 5th fret again. So here's our A major chord shape. To work out what key we're in this time, we're going to have to use the 5th string. So we're putting our first finger behind the nut on the 5th string, and there's our A, and 2 frets in front is B, 1 fret in front is C, and then 2 frets in front is D. So this becomes D major. So in order to make this shape movable, we need the first finger free again. 2nd finger here, 3rd finger, 4th finger, and then we have our first finger free, like this. This voicing is a bit of a stretch. It's a bit like the sus4 voicing in the E form. So what we can do here is just replace these fingers with a 3rd finger bar like this. Now, it is possible to play the first string in this instance. You have to bar this one, and then you have to make sure that this finger comes off before the first string. But the way that I like to play it is just with the middle 4 strings. And a little tip to be able to play this, you see how my 2nd finger is kind of leaning over onto the 3rd? That really helps to get the right pressure down to be able to push that 3rd finger down enough. All right, let's look at the other chord forms. So let's check out our minor chord form now. So we've got 2nd, 3rd, and 1st here. We swap them out for 3rd, 4th, 2nd, and then we have the first finger free like this. So moving on to our dominant 7th chord now. We usually would play 1st and 2nd finger. This time we're going to go 3rd and 4th finger like this. Notice here how I'm also leaning that 2nd finger into the 1st to give more support to push that bar down. And finally for our sus4 chord, we've got the 1st finger here, 2nd and pinky like this. We need the 1st finger free, so we'll swap these 2 here for 2nd and 3rd, and then 1st finger goes like that. So let's have a go at playing that chord progression we did earlier that just used major chords. This time the G is going to be all the way up here on the 10th fret, so we can work this out as A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then we put our major chord form here. And then B is A, B. And then C would be 1 fret in front, so, and then A, B, C, D. So our full chord progression goes. Now let's revisit that chord progression we did earlier that uses all 4 chord types, but this time we're going to use the A chord form. So we have B flat sus4, which is on the 1st fret here. And then we have A minor, which is just our open position A minor chord. And then we have G, which is all the way up here on the 10th fret. And then that becomes G7. So the whole chord progression goes like this. So as you can see, when we use only the A form for this chord progression, that G and G7 up here feel completely disconnected from the other chords. This is one of the reasons why it's great to have a second option. So let's look at two ways of playing another chord progression that uses both the E and the A form. So the thing that I notice immediately from those two options is that option 1 feels really cramped compared to option 2, because option 1, everything is up here, and to get your fingers all together like that, it feels really squished. Whereas down here, all those shapes are much more natural to play. Also, if I was accompanying a singer or if I was playing on my own, I might prefer that sound of being in the lower register more than the higher register. However, with two guitars, that option where we're right up the fretboard here in that higher register might be just the thing we need to thicken up the sound of the lower register chords. The point here is not that one option is right and the other is wrong. It's that we now have multiple options to experiment with instead of being stuck with just one option. So now we have two major chords, two minor chords, two dominant seventh chords, and two suspended fourth chords, all in 12 keys, which gives us 96 chords. And this is just the beginning. Next, we're going to apply this concept to jazz chords. Click here to check that one out next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.